So we're at the Mishnah on Kuf Samchei Amud Beis. You just see something. I think I might have put the wrong. Yeah, Kuf Samchei Amud Beis. At the bottom, Kosaboy, about 15 lines at the bottom. Kosaboy Zuzin Ma'ah. He said, if someone wrote a star, Reuven wrote a star, and it says, I owe Shimon 100 Zuzin. The Inun Sloyan Esrin, which is, and the star says that this is equivalent to 20 sloin. Now each selah has 4 zuz, so this is clearly something's lost in translation. Ele esrin zuzim. He only gets the star only obligates Ruvain to pay Shimon 80 zuz, not 100 zuz, because we say that we're on Kuf Samchei Amud Beis. We just started the Mishnah. So if someone, so we just started. If someone wrote a star and it says on it that this star says that I Ruvain owe Shimon 100 zuz, which is 20 sloin, and a selah usually has 20 zuz in it. So has 4 zuzin in it. So 4 times 20 is 80. We say that this is talking about, the zuzin that are a little worn out. In those days, they didn't have such a stable currency like we do. The currency was really based on the amount of metal, I think, in the coin. So if you had a slightly rubbed out zuz, it was missing 1/4 of its metal, so it was worth only 80% of its value. So even though he said it was 100 zuz, but the 100 zuzim were all worn out zuzim, so they were equivalent to really just 80 zuz, which is the same thing as 20 slime. Ein lo yala esrin zuzin ma'ah. I'm sorry, ein lo yala esrin zuzin ma'ah. Zuzin ma'ah, the inon tlossent line. What if he said 100 zuzin? That's 30 slime. So 30 slime is normally 120 zuz. Like we said, each selah is 4 zuz. Ein lo yala mana kesef. I'm sorry, ein lo yala mana. He only gets a mana. Because now, in this case, we always have to. We're talking about the Motzei mechaveri, and the person who is creating the obligation in the star. We always give him the advantage. So, in this case, he's talking about slime that are worn out. So even though he said 30, but they're really only equivalent to 100. So when he said 100, that's 30. We have to assume that he's talking about degraded sellers, and that's why they only equal up to 100 zuz. Kesef zuzin. Kesef zuzin the inun benimchak. In another case, what if he had a star that says in it, Reuven says, I owe to Shimon kesef of zuzin, and then the next word, which says, which in all likelihood is the amount, it's rubbed out, and you can't see what the amount of zuzin is. Ein pochas mishtayim. I'm sorry, did I lose my place? Ein pachas mishtayim, right? He doesn't get less than 2. He gets it says zuzin, so zuzin is a lashon, a plural lashon. So the minimum it could be is 2. So he can't prove anything more than that. Kesef sloim di inun v'nimchak ein pachas mishtayim. If he wrote sloim, so then it has to be a minimum of 2 sloim. He wrote it was the amount was rubbed out. So we say the minimum amount. It's a plural, so it has to be a minimum of 2, but nothing more than that. Darkoinus di inun v'nimchak ein pachas mishtayim. The same thing with darkoinus, which is like we said, sloim is 4 zuzim. A darkoin is 2 sloim. So he said darkoinus. So he said a plural lashon. He gets 2 darkoinus, and not more. Kosel boy milmayla mana umilmata masayim. He wrote a star, so it turns out they mention the amount of the star 3 times in a star. First at the beginning, then again later underneath that, and then all the way at the bottom. If you remember, we said the last line you're supposed to summarize and that you disregard. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about the first two times. And one time he said a mana, and the bottom he said 200. So we say, or the other way around, he first said 200 and then 100. We say the second one is the one that we listen to because the person changed his mind, and the second one is the one he wants to control. So the Gemara asks, if that's the case, why do you write both the top and the bottom? Why don't you just write it one time? So the reason why we write at the beginning of the star the amount, and then we write it again a second time, and the second time is always going to be the one that's going to dictate what we're going to listen to, is because in case one letter gets either erased or it was forgotten, there was a typo, so you can use the second thing that it wrote, the first one, to tell us what the second one was. Like it said, it said shin, and we don't know, does that shnayim, or is it sheish? So you look at the top and you'll compare it, and that will tell you what it meant on the bottom. Tan Rabban, Amar Kesef ein pachas midiner kesef. If he says I'm obligating myself in a star, he can't give less than a dinar kesef. It means one dinar, a dinar of kesef. There's two types of dinrim. There's a dinar kesef and there's a dinar of zav. The dinar zav is 25 times as valuable as the dinar kesef. But he just said kesef, so it means a dinar of kesef. Kesef dinrin v'dinrin kesef. He said a lashon of kesef, and I'm giving a plural dinrin, or dinrin and then kesef. Ein pachas mishtei dinrin. Then since he used a plural lashon, that means two. Of kesef, and it has to be of kesef. Kesef bid dinrin. But what if he wrote a lashon of kesef in or by dinrin or in dinrin, meaning it's nominated in dinrin? Ein pachas mibishnei dinrin dahav. That's not, in that case, since it's a plural lashon. He didn't say kesef dinrin. He said kesef in dinrin. That's going to be dinrin zav. But in kesef, that he has to pay it in kesef. I'm sorry. Yeah. So we're going to see later on that the lashon of dinrin is mashma. It's a more of a mashmayis of kesef. Depends on whether you say dinri or dinrin, but there's a specific lashon here that's mashma of kesef. So since he said in dinrin, but he said kesef, so we say there's two things that are at work here. There's what type of currency you pay him in, and then there's the amount. So we're saying in this case, as far as the amount, he meant the more valuable dinrei kesef. And as far as what type of currency he should be paid in, he gets paid in kesef. So it says kesef b'dinrin, it means I want to get paid. I'm going to, or he obligated himself to pay to the amount, the value of 2 dinrim of kesef, of zav, but he's going to pay it in silver. Zak the Gemara. Amar Mar. So go back to the beginning of this brisa. Kesef and pachas medina kesef. If he said I'm paying kesef, it's not less than a dinar kesef. Ve'emanaska. How do we know it means a coin of kesef? All he said was silver. Maybe it means a small piece of silver, not a coin at all. It says in it not just kesef, but it says matbeya of kesef. The aim of priti. One says, well, how do you know it's a matbeya? How do you know it's a dinar? All he said was a matbeya of kesef. Maybe it means a pruta. A pruta is less than a dinar. It's in a place where they don't usually make prutas out of silver. They make them out of copper. Whenever we talk about a pruta, usually we talk about a copper pruta, not a silver pruta. Tan Rabban. So that's the brisa about kesef. The have gold ain't pachas midiner. If he said I owe you, like we're going to see a coin of gold, it's going to be a dinar of zav, midiner zav. The hav dinrin v'dinrin the hav. If he said gold dinrin or dinrin of gold, Ein pachas mishnei dinrin. Then it has to be 2 dinrin, dahav of gold. Dahav bedinrin. We use the same lashon like we said before by silver kesef bedinrin, where he's saying not dinner, a kesef, a dinner or 2 dinrim of kesef, but he said kesef of dinrin, or in this case, gold of dinrin, zahav of dinrin, ein pachas mi b'shnei dinrin kesef dahav. In this case, it's going to be the opposite way around. We're going to say the lashon dahav dinrin means that the value is silver dinrin, 1/25th the size of the silver, and he pays it in gold. It'll be a very small amount of gold, just the amount of gold that would be 2 dinrei kesef. Amar mar, dahav ein pachas mi dinner dahav. If he said gold, it's not less than a dinar of zav, a manaska. How do we know? Again, the same question we asked before. How do we know it's a dinar? How do we know it's a coin? Maybe it's a piece of gold. Amar laza the kasam matbeya. Again, he wrote matbeya. Be'ema priti, maybe it means a pruta of gold. Priti dahava le'avdi inshi. That now we don't say the same terms. Before we said it's in a place where they don't make silver prutas. Over here we're saying in general, nobody makes prutas out of gold. They'd be very tiny. Then the Brisa continued, zahav bedinrin. If he said zahav denominated in dinrin, ein pachas mishnei dinrin kesef, zahav. Then in that case, he pays the value of 2 dinrei kesef in gold. Be'ema dava pricha. Maybe, how do you know? Be'ema dava pricha. The Gemara. Be'ema dava pricha betrayed dinri dahava kamar. How do we know that it means, it's saying dahava bedinrin. He said gold bedinrin. How do we know it means that those dinrin now are talking about silver dinrin? Maybe it's talking about gold dinrin. What he's saying is, I'm talking about small pieces of gold that are worth trade dinrei of gold. How do we know to switch it up and say that it means bedafka silver dinrin? The reason is because we have a ambiguous lashon. It says bedinrin, and we don't know whether that means dinrin of zav or dinrin of silver. So we choose dinrin of silver because it's a motzei mechaver al avaraya. The person who's holding the star and trying to be motzei mammon, his yada is ala tachtaina. In fact, the Gemara, so that we leave out this whole this parentheses, and the Rashbam changed it. The Rashbam changes it to Lashon Ihachi Reishanami, which is on the last wide line. You see, he has in his Divrei Masel Ihachi Reishanami. The Gemara is saying now that the reason why, when he said Dahav Bedinrin, that we say assume it's talking about silver dinrin, is because we always give the tie to the person who's holding the money, meaning the person who wrote the star, not the person who's holding the star. The person who's holding the star is trying to be motzei mammon with the star. So you say we assume it means the smallest amount possible. So therefore we assume it's silver dinrin. So the Gemara asks, what about the reisha? Meaning both in the reisha of the first brisa, we were talking about where he said kesef bedinrin, we said he means to pay the amount of gold dinrin, 2 gold dinrin. So there we're giving the tie to the holder of to the one who's holding the star, who's trying to be motzei mammon. And additionally, the beginning of this actual brisa, where we said, if he said dahav dinrin, or basically zav dinrin, or zav, or he said stam zav, that we say it means a gold dinar or 2 gold dinrin. Why don't we say maybe it's talking about that he pays in gold, he pays the amount of a silver dinar. So over there again, we're making it the larger amount, even though the person holding the star is trying to be motzei mammon with it. Rav Ashi reisha the cost of dinri, sefer the cost of dinrin. Rav Ashi says even though the Gemara doesn't reflect it, we don't have that in the Brisa. It's talking about slightly different lashonos. In the cases where we said the dinrin is referring to silver, it's talking about where you use the lashon of dinri. Seifa that we say it's talking about Zav, it's talking about the cost of Dinrin. Where do we know that there's such a distinction? The Tanya. This is a brisa about the din of a suffix Yeledis and a suffix Zava, and it's a bit complicated, but really the raya is very simple. So you don't have to get too worried about the. I'll say over the Shakavatariya, but the raya is going to be pretty simple. The Tanya. A woman who was a suffix, she was royadam, or she was pregnant and she miscarried 5 times in a row. Meaning it happened 1 month, and it happened a month later, and again a month later. And when a woman is miscarries, it depends on what she sees. Is what she's seeing dam, or is it an uber? If it's an uber, then she's a moilid, and there's a din that a woman who's moilid has to bring karbonis. So, and she's not sure, and it happened 5 times. The din is, or a woman who's safek chamish zivis. If a woman is roya dam, our din nida that we always talk about is not a real nida. I mean, it's not the din nida that we have, that you wait 5 clean days, and then 7 days, 5 days of being roya dam, and then 7 days of not being roya dam. That's really a zava gedayla. And we always say misafik that every woman is a zava gedayla because there's very intricate rules about which dam is dam nida and which is zava gedayla. If it's in the first 11 days from when she's roya dam, then it's a nida. After those 11 days, if she's roya after those 11 days, then she becomes a zava gedayla. But the Chachamim got rid of that distinction, and we always treat everyone as a zava gedayla. So this is a woman, but this is prior to that. So this woman, it's not clear whether she was roya during the Yemei of nida or the Yemei ziva gedayla. A zava gedayla has to bring a carbon. So Zaktimar, maybe a carbon echad, vaychalis bizvachim. These women that are sveikas of whether they had 1 or 5, or there's suffix on all 5 of them, they bring 1 carbon, and that carbon is enough to be matar them. Vaychalis bizvachim. Vein hashar aleh chayva. There's no chayv to bring the rest of them. The reason why there's no chayv to bring the other ones, even though there were 5 possible latest, and there should be a carbon for each one, is because the din is if you bring a carbon misafik and you're wrong, and you're not mechayev in the carbon, then means you brought chulin la'azara, and the kaihanim might end up eating chulin la'azara. You're treating something as a carbon that's not really a carbon because you weren't mechayev in the carbon. So therefore, since it's only a suffix, you only bring the one misafik. You can bring 1 in order to be matarer because she needs to become tar. Misafik can do that, but more than that, the other ones, the chachamim masakin, that you shouldn't bring them because we don't want the kahanim to eat chulin bazar. Hayu aleh chamish leidos vadoyis chamish zivas vadoyis maybe a carbon echad vaychalas is zvachim. If they were all vadai and she did one after the other, she never brought the carbon. So you bring, as soon as she brings 1 carbon, she's already tar that she could eat kachim. Vashar aleh chayv, and the rest she has to bring. Maisa v'omdu kinim b'Yushalayim b'din reizav. There was a maisa where, because so many women had to bring so many karbanas because of this din, that every woman who had a ziva, when she would come to Yushalayim, she'd have to bring from the whole year. She had 10 zivas, so she had to buy 20 birds in order to be yaitza ola chayvis, and the cost of birds went up to Yushalayim to where it was worth 2 dinim of zav. And here, this is the raya. That was the whole raya for the fact we call dinrei zav as dinrei is a lashon zav. Amar Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, hamaven hazeh, hamayin hazeh. He says he made a shvua. In all in halayla, if I'm going to sleep at night, achiyu bedinrin, until I bring down the cost of these birds to dinrin, which is a lashon of silver. So dinri is gold and dinrin is silver. So that's what you see from this story. Nichnis lebezdin. So he came into Bezdin. V'limen ha'isha shahayu aleh chamish leidos vadoyis, chamish zivas vadoyis, maybe a carbon echad v'chelad v'zvachim. That she could bring 1 carbon, and she only has to bring that 1 carbon. Vein hashar aleh chayva, and she's not mechayev to bring the rest. He made this takana, and this is he wasn't being mavatal the first shita. There's a different Tana who disagrees, who's chaylik, and says that you only have to bring 1. So he instituted that other Tana. He paskin like the other Tana because the cost of birds was going up so much. And what happened? And at that point, because of his takana, he caused the price of these birds to go down to a quarter of a dinar by virtue of his takana. Okay, right. Kasav milmailo said in the Mishnah, if the person wrote a star, and in the first mention of the amount, let's say it said 100, and the second mention it said 200, or vice versa. The first mention it said 200, the second one it said 100. The Mishnah said that we go bust to the second one. And then the Mishnah asked, if so, why do you say both of them? So the Mishnah answered, because the first one is there in case you're missing a letter of the second mention. You look at the first one, and that will tell you what the amount is supposed to be. It's only if there's one letter that's missing. For example, if the reason why we write the entire, it's not just talking the amount, it's talking about also the full all the particulars of this star. So if there was someone whose name was Chanan and in the bottom it wrote Chanani, so we'll say, oh, it's missing, even though on the top it says, let's say on the top it said Chanani and the bottom it said Chanan. So you'll say, oh, it's just missing the letter, the extra yud, the Anan Me'anani, or if he left out the yud of Anan. So we'll go bust to the second one, but the first one could tell you that he was just missing the letter.
Isn't that 2 letters?
No. Where's the 2 letters? It's the mem is not part of it, right?
Right, and then right.
It's just the yud. It's a little deceptive, right? The mem is just part of the Gemara. It's not part of his name. So Maishna Shtei Oisi is the law. Why is it that it only helps for one letter? We only will say, look at the first time it was written to tell us what's the second time. Only for one letter, but not 2. Dilma Misrami Shem ben Arba Oisius. Because maybe you'll have a name made up of 4 Oisius. V'havale Palge de Shma. And then it will be half of the name, and half of the name to be dictated by the first time it was mentioned in the star. Like, let's say the first one was Noach, and then it changed to Nachman. Or Nachman and changed to Noach. So we have to say, if it's such a stark difference where it's half the name, we have to assume that the name really was Noach, even though on top it said Nachman. We can't assume that it was erased and he really meant to say Nachman. It's only if it's one letter missing, not 2. So he says, so if that's the case, if you have one letter, maybe we should be worried about a case where it's a name made up of 2 letters, and then one letter is half of the name, right? Noach is an example of that. I don't know exactly how that would work, because nobody has a name made up of 1 letter. It's like, what's the? I guess the point is, even if it's just a nun, let's say just the nun was on the bottom, and on top it says Noach. Well, you can say maybe it's not Noach, maybe it's a Nod or a Ner or something else. So if half of the name is missing, l'chayri should have to worry about that as well. So why are we staying by 1 ice? We trust it. The reason why 2 ices is not good, not because it might be half. Because it could be roiv of the shame, and roiv of the shame to come from the top part of the star we don't do, but 1 can never be roiv of a shame. Amra Papa, different, related but different question. Shitali safel milmaila v'kafel milmata. At the top, it talks about a couch, which is a seifel, and the bottom it says a kafel, which is something else, some other kli. I think it's a piece of clothing. You're going to go after the second one. That means that's the general rule: is if you have 2 opposing descriptions, you go after the second. And in this case, there's no way to change, even though it's just 1 letter off. You can't change. There's no way to imagine that a saf turned into a kuf. So since it's a new letter, it's a new word, so that the second one is operative. Boira Papa, what about the other way around? Kafel milmai levasafel milmata. Mai. What's the question? Michai shinin lezvuv oiloi. When you have a kuf on top and it changes to a saf, it's possible that the Sefer was writing it and he wrote originally a kuf, and then a animal came, a insect came and landed on the star while it was still wet and moved the leg of the kuf over and put it on together with the top part, and it made it into a saf, into the opening of the pei, and made it into the opening of the kuf, and made it into a samach. Like there, teku. That's not a good question. Huda have a kosev be shis ma'a bezuza. He wrote 600 and a zuz, but he didn't say 600 what? He said 600 and a zuz. And we don't know what is their what is he intending? What is he intending that the star should obligate him for? Shalcha of Shabi Kameda Abaya Shisma Isteri Vizuza. Well, we assume it means 600 isteri. Isteri is a shear. It's a sela, which is so 4 zuzin. So it's essentially 2,401 zuzin. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, this is another question. So they asked this question. Rushabi asked another question. Shis meya isteri. He said 600 isteri, which is, like we said, 600 selas, or 2,400 zuz v'zuzah. Oidilma shis meya priti v'zuzah. Or do we? I'm sorry. So this is his answer. Do we say it means sela, or do we mean, does it mean priti, which is less than a zuz? Amalei dal priti. You can't say priti. To say a pruta, which is less than a zuz, that can be. Like kasvi b'shtara. No one would ever write, say 600 and refer to prutas. Prutas is like a cent. You'll never see a star that says, I'm going to buy this house for 8 billion cents. You're never going to denominate a star in cents. You can do the lowest you'll do it in dollars. So over here, the question is, does it mean dollars or does it mean $5 bills? They would sometimes denominate things in $5. Because people count them up with mashvi luzuzi. They're going to make it into zuzah. So my amrit shismei isteri v'zuzah. Maybe it means isteris. So on that we say yad balashtar ala tachtoina. On that, legabi that question, as far as that's concerned, we're not going to say it's going to mean zuzim, because to say it means sloim, you can't be motzei mammon. You can't say it's 2,400 because of the shaila, because of the possibility. It's hamotzei mechaver alavaraya and yad balashtar is ala tachtoina. Okay, we'll stop over here. Yashar koyach. Bez Hashem tomorrow.